sponsor this event. Special thanks to Dr. Todd Bradley for being our moderator. Special thanks to Josh Mudd for participating, and special thanks to Tim Falk for being here. So without much ado, let's get started.
And I'll go over the rules, you guys. I mean, they're very brief. They're not as stodgy, so to speak, or rigid, perhaps, as the presidential debates. So, nevertheless, so this will be the format. So we'll have opening statements, including introductions by Josh and Tim, and we'll say, of course, what they teach, etc. And then, so after that, we'll start with the first question. We have a set of questions, and we'll eventually get to the audience after we go through the set of questions. Each person will be given 5 minutes to answer, after which the opponent will receive 3 minutes for rebuttal, after which they will be asked the same question. This format will continue in this manner until there are no more questions or time has run out. So, on the left, your left, you're Bernie Sanders, a.k.a. Tim Falk. or Ted Cruz, I should say. Yeah. Bernie Sanders over here, so no, nevertheless. Bernie Sanders, Tim Cruz, Ted Cruz. No, so anyway, it should be fun, and it's informative, and we can still be friends and colleagues, and hopefully it won't be kind of popsy in the world, we won't kill each other off, so we're respectful, etc. So I'm looking forward to it.
We're going to have any Twitter questions?
No, I think we'll have maybe next time. So, without further ado, we'll go ahead and, so who do I start with first? Tim or Josh? Look at hand, guys. Josh.
Sure. So just introduce myself here?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. My name is Dr. Joshua Mudd. I teach philosophy here at IUK. My research is in philosophy of psychology, philosophy of mind. I work on the nature of belief, human rationality, and I apply this to implicit belief and the implications for racism and philosophy of religion.
All right, well, my name is Tim Falk. I teach in the Department of Criminal Justice and Homeland Security. I'm a lecturer here. My background is I was a state trooper for about 11 and a half years before I started teaching full-time. This is my 4th year here at IUK Kokomo.
Okay, great. So, the first question, do you believe marijuana should be legalized? Why or why not? We'll start with Josh and go over to Tim. First question, should marijuana be legalized? Why or why not?
Okay, I'm a philosopher. I don't much care about persuasion. I care much more about truth. So before I actually get started here, I just want to say, and I want to urge everyone, not to walk away deciding based on who is more persuasive, but rather on whose arguments were in fact better. So with that said, I'll dive in. It was Aristotle who said in a letter to his son on how to live a fulfilling life, now we call it the Nicomachean Ethics, he said that virtue exists as a golden mean between two extremes. For example, courage exists as a golden mean between cowardice on the one hand and outright stupidity on the other. Temperance, virtue we'll be considering tonight, is the mean between total debauchery or drunkenness on the one hand and total abstinence or prudishness on the other. The virtuous person, Aristotle told his son, occupies a middle position with regard to pleasure. The virtuous agent can use a substance without abusing it. I'll argue tonight that marijuana should be legal. There are several arguments in favor of my position, not all of which I endorse. The first and most obvious, I think, is the libertarian defense. It goes like this. The government should only outlaw that which is harmful to others, rather than myself. But my using marijuana does not harm other people. At worst, it harms myself. Therefore, it shouldn't be outlawed. If you're the kind of person who thinks that the government should not be involved in telling that you have to wear a helmet, you should think that marijuana should be legal. Now, I, however, am not necessarily convinced that this libertarian thesis is true, but even so, there are other arguments that I can marshal. Let's consider 2 that I endorse tonight. Perhaps some of you are theists, you believe that God exists as I do, and I now offer an argument aimed solely at you simply because I can't resist doing so. I must point out that God made marijuana, and God made all things very good, Genesis 2 and 1. Therefore, marijuana is very good. Furthermore, God desires his creatures' happiness. Consider his words in Isaiah concerning the plans to prosper his people as they go into exile. Furthermore, God made us in his image. And we demonstrate our image-bearing of God when we can take things in this world and use them to our benefit. Trees for lumber, uranium for energy, and yes, perhaps, marijuana for smoking. There is therefore prima facie evidence for the theist that marijuana use is morally permissible. Since we ought not outlaw that which is morally permissible, marijuana should be legal. Okay, let's consider a more general argument. This argument hinges on the fact that marijuana is not more harmful than already legal substances such as alcohol, tobacco, or indeed caffeine. Marijuana temporarily blocks connections between brain cells. This is how it works. It's a physiological effect. Alcohol, on the other hand, kills them. It's possible to overdose on alcohol. We call it alcohol poisoning. However, there are no reported cases of marijuana overdose, according to an article in the Canadian Medical Association Journal. Alcohol alone can kill you. Marijuana can't. Since alcohol should be legal, marijuana should be as well. Now, I'm sure that we're going to discuss the medical and cognitive effects of marijuana tonight, so I'm not going to spend too much on those details right now. I'll simply say what my opponent here must argue if he's going to take this line of argument. Namely, he must demonstrate not merely that marijuana use is harmful, but that it rises to a dangerous level of harmfulness, something that goes above and beyond the dangers of alcohol or tobacco. He must demonstrate that this will occur even with responsible use, because almost any substance can be abused. Cough syrup and bath salts come to mind. This does not imply that it should be illegal. My opponent must demonstrate that marijuana is far more harmful than alcohol and tobacco, and I admit I don't believe that he can do this.
Thank you, Josh.
And then am I supposed to answer that question?
No, actually, just start out like, you believe marijuana should be legalized, why or not, why not, so you're not, let them get to the
Gotcha.
questions next.
Okay, go ahead. Okay, so where I'm going to start is I heard a quote the other day from a conservative commentator, and this came from a conservative commentator. He says, you can't have liberty without order, okay? And when I think of marijuana and the way Josh presented it there, he makes good arguments, and those are the arguments that are brought forth by those that do support the legalization of marijuana. However, when I look at that, when I look at whether or not marijuana should be legalized, I don't necessarily look at it in a sense of a blanket legalization. Okay, there are certain parts of the legalization debate that I think most of us would at some point consider valid. Okay, and of course I'm assuming that we will get into some of those according to the email and the rules later on. And I'll say why I either support or don't support those. But when I look at the legalization of marijuana for recreational use in, specifically, I look at it more along the lines of what the long-lasting effects of marijuana could be, and what is the available research that's out there right now for us to be able to judge that long-lasting effects are not going to be harmful to society in general. And yes, Josh talked about the individual, if it doesn't harm society, it might only harm the individual, then we shouldn't make it illegal. And I can completely understand that. In some cases, I can agree with that. But I won't come out and say that I agree that marijuana won't necessarily, if it's more prevalent in society, it necessarily won't have a harmful effect on the rest of us, okay? We've just now, within the last 3 years, had a few states that decided to legalize marijuana for recreational purposes. Many more states have legalized marijuana over the last decade or so for medicinal purposes. And, I think in the state of Indiana that will be coming very, very shortly. So my answer is no, I do not support the legalization of marijuana. And as we go along, I want to get more in depth on that. But my stance is mainly because why I don't support the legalization of marijuana is the lack of available empirical research that shows what the long-term effects of marijuana will do to someone. And so that's where I stand at this point in time.
Okay, excellent. So you guys, the next set of questions, so they'll give a 5-minute stance, and then the other side of the candidate, so to speak, will give a 3-minute rebuttal, and it'll be vice versa. So, and we have several questions, and then once we get through these questions, we'll open up to the audience. So you guys hopefully can hear me okay without the microphone. So the first question, Josh, so will be 5 minutes, and then Tim will do the rebuttal, and then vice versa. So would you prefer legalization to decriminalization, or would you prefer to see it stay prohibited? Why or why not? So would you prefer legalization to decriminalization, or would you prefer to see it stay prohibited? Why or why not?
Well, I support legalization, ergo I support decriminalization as well, since I support the stronger of the two theses. So you want to know why?
Yeah.
Okay. So I suppose the reason why I've already offered two arguments in favor, one stemming from my theistic perspective, the other stemming from my argument that there is a bar that might allow something to be made illegal if it's this harmful, this level of harm. But there are certain substances that we think should be legal. Alcohol, tobacco, caffeine are among them, that fall below that bar. And I think that marijuana use falls below the bar of even alcohol, in fact, since it's not possible to overdose on marijuana, so it seems, the empirical data seems to suggest this. Whereas it is possible to overdose using alcohol. I think we do have somewhat decent evidence that long-term use of marijuana is not harmful to an individual. So I looked at some meta-analyses, we might talk about that in the long run here, in preparation for this debate. Of course, I'm always in favor of more data, is great. Unfortunately, one of the reasons we don't have data is because of the restrictions that are currently in place, so there are some difficulties in gathering that data. But yes, I would support legalization over decriminalization. Decriminalization might be a bridge, but generally I don't like the idea of simply saying, well, this is going to be illegal on the books, but we're going to turn a blind eye. I think that there's something a little bit strange about that. I'm not sure that I can marshal an argument in favor of that position, but that might be a step in the right direction. But I would support full legalization.
Okay. Tim, you want to rebut?
Well, I just like to, I know there are no cases of anyone overdosing on marijuana, and that is, that's out there. Every organization reports that. The DEA, Department of Justice, everyone acknowledges that there are no, that no one has yet overdosed from marijuana. But there are other effects that they have seen from the available research that are out there that shows a long-term effect of having cognitive issues and emotional issues, especially the younger that marijuana use does start. The younger onset of marijuana use will create problems in the long run from the research they have. But again, there are still questions with that particular research because of what Dr. Mugg had pointed out about the availability of the drug to actually research and the money that's out there and available from the federal government. So, I don't like us to get stuck on the fact that when we're trying to decide whether or not we're going to legalize or decriminalize, whatever, that there's been no overdoses. Yes, that's something that we do need to consider, but I don't think it should be the most, I guess, telling fact when it comes to the use of marijuana.
So, Tim, with that said, if it were, legalization to decriminalization, or would you just outright carte blanche want it to still be prohibited?
No, my position on this, and I have for the last couple of years in my intro to criminal justice classes, have held a marijuana legalization debate. And we have three positions that the students get into groups. Legalization decriminalization or keeping it the same. And my position is always decriminalization. And I think the decriminalization goes a long way in helping to solve an argument that many on the side of legalization support, and that is the a lower amount of people that are arrested or put into the criminal justice system based on simple possession of marijuana, okay? And with a decriminalization, we can either say there's a fine attached to it, or you just can't have it. It can be confiscated. But in my sense, decriminalization is the route to go. And it makes it so we don't have the recreational use at this point in time because of, and I'll get to reading some of the statements by some of the professional medical organizations that are out there. Well, I'll go over that as well. But as a citizen, I would support decriminalization. And here in Indiana, we have even over the past few years, if you've been following any of the laws, and when I was a state trooper, any amount of marijuana that you were arrested for to a seed in your console or whatever it might be, a little tiny piece of a blunt in your ashtray was an A misdemeanor, okay? You could get an A misdemeanor. If you were caught with 30 grams, or it was your second time getting caught with a little marijuana seed, it was a D felony. It was an automatic felony for the second time being caught with that. But we completely revamped our system. In 2013, they passed a law. In 2014, it took effect where they changed that and made it a B misdemeanor to have any amount of marijuana if you're not possessing it to sell it. Made it a B misdemeanor. So we are on our way to where we need to be. And they also took out that they made it a felony that if you are possessing 30 grams and have been convicted of any other drug offense, okay? So they made that a level 6 felony because they redid our felonies in our entire criminal justice system. So with that though, I'd also like to point out that we had a Senate, and Dr. Bradley, you might know something about this if you remember hearing it. There was a Senate committee at the State House that came up with a decriminalization that made it so many grams were going to be a infraction to possess, which means you're not going to be charged criminally. It's a decriminalization. And the governor at the time, well, it was Mike Pence, but he told them, he said, I don't think the state is ready for this. I won't sign it. So it died at the committee level because they couldn't get it out without any support, knowing it was going to go on. So, all right.
Okay, thanks. Josh, did you want to rebut any of that, or next question?
I think that actually Professor Folk and I are in agreement